Welcome to Don't Fear the Wait podcast with your host Vicky Masita, bringing together science and personal experience.
Hello, good afternoon, good morning and good evening. That was a very quick day, wasn't it, Luke? Nice.
Thankfully.
Welcome back to the Exclusive Titan podcast, Chinwag, whatever it is that you want to call it. We just kind of like hook up and like to have a little bit of a live chat, don't we?
Yeah, now and again. Yeah,
every now and again. It's been a little bit of a while since we've done one of these for the simple fact that we have been so busy talking about programming and making sure that our athletes are extremely looked after. But this is quite a nice one, actually. But first of all, talking about programming and everything, we have got Luke back in the hot seat, who is the programming master when it comes to making sure that powerlifters are programmed accordingly. So, afternoon, Luke. How the devil
Vicky.
Are we?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well. I think maybe a little bit sad.
You're sad?
Yeah,
Why
a
are you sad?
little bit of seasonal affective disorder, to be honest.
Oh, get over yourself.
Where's the sunshine?
Indeed, but put your fanny away, and there's lots of other things to be grateful for apart from not having sunshine.
Well, there is, true. Are you talking to you, obviously?
Exactly.
Yes.
Me with my zombie eye. A couple of people have already mentioned the fact that I look like something out of 28 Days Later. I have been affected.
No, they look a lot better.
And well, obviously, just gives me a little bit more colour. It saves me having to put on makeup. This is exactly why I've done it. But
we must put a warning on these things to listen to them in the car, not actually watch the videos.
Indeed, yes, I know. So yeah, if you are watching this, apologies for us looking absolutely detrimental. Luke is not sleeping, but I am gorgeous as always. Right, moving swiftly on into the subject matter of hand. We are going to be talking about programming today.
We are, yeah. We've had a few questions about sort of deloading and programming and peaking and stuff like that. Especially as it's like the world champs at this moment. So we thought we'd talk a little bit about how we do things.
Indeed.
Whether it's right or wrong. Without further ado, we'll start one of the questions. Tracy asked, actually, should one deload, when one should deload, is it necessary, etc., etc.?
Interesting.
It is, because it's one of those things that I've been sort of thinking about a lot, obviously, because I have a lot of people I program and everyone's different and everyone possibly needs a deload now and again.
Indeed.
But there are so many factors that affect, in my opinion, whether people need a deload and how long for and what sort of deload it is.
Okay, so let's first of all just get into the subject of that deloading for powerlifters, because if we actually take into consideration, or if we actually take into account powerlifters versus non-powerlifters, so even just people who are like bodybuilders, for example,
general population
training fatigue is going to be completely different to each other, realistically, aren't they? Because powerlifters use a progressive overload technique, but in insanely heavy weights compared to bodybuilders.
Most do, not all.
Yes, most do.
But yeah, I know what you're saying. And also some people train harder than others. Some people's nutrition is better than others. Some people have less life stresses than others. Some people sleep better than others. Some people are able to utilize heavier weights for their build and frame and strength levels than others. So they're at that more absolute strength. So it's a really hard question to answer. And it's one of those things that you just have to be aware of. And one of the best ways of knowing when to deload. It's funny, I was planning to chat about this with Carla actually today, because she's flying and just following on from my little video we did last week on the linear progression, she actually tripled what she maxed out at the British in February today.
Amazing.
So she did 100 for free with probably another one in the tank. And
nice
I was
work,
almost, so I'll put the video of that later. But I was saying to her, how do you feel? Because obviously her lifts are going up and up and up. And she won't mind me saying this, and it's no offense to her, but she's not in her 20s. She's in mid 40s. So you have to be a little bit more aware of recovery, etc. And I said, how do you feel? And she said, I'm flying. I'm like, okay, well, we haven't had any sort of time off for quite a while. And when I say quite a while, I'm talking about 6-7 weeks. But I know she's working with you closely with regard to her nutrition, and her supplementation has changed, and as well.
And all the drugs. That's why she's amazing and why she feels like she's flying.
Or the legal supplementation.
Indeed,
obviously. Really throw that one in there. That's why all our athletes do it amazing. And we living in our 6-bedroom houses.
Exactly.
So she's like, well, no, I feel great. But as a coach, I'm like, okay, well, she's PBing most weeks, which is great short term, but you have to be aware that, you know, powerlifting is a marathon, not a sprint, and you have to be conscious that it's not a good idea to keep the pedal to the metal all the time. So even though she feels great, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, now is it a good time just to take that foot off the pedal, because she's been going 100 miles an hour, even though she feels she can still go 100 miles an hour, just that so we can go on to the next track without any damage, using the motor racing metaphor. So I think, that's the doorbell. What is that doorbell? We pause this for a second?
No, we're just
right. Just talk about how you changed Carla's supplementation.
How I introduced all the trends.
Yes.
Right. So as you can see there, Luke, if he's disappearing out of the exclusive Titan door to go and answer his doorbell. Always happens, and it's very, very rude. So in terms of having a look at Carla's supplementation, I'm not going to go into too much detail, because obviously there are some personal things there that we have changed in accordance with Carla's hormones. And all of these kind of things that we implement in terms of nutritional and dietary strategies do have their places, and it is very, very individual. And this is exactly the same when it comes to programming and deloading, which is what I'm assuming Luke is going to get into next. About deloading needs to be individualized and possibly auto-regulated as well. So when you were thinking about this, Luke, sorry, Luke has actually come back now. When you were thinking about this, that obviously you haven't had a deload for about 6 or 7 weeks, but Carla is actually thinking, well, no, actually I'm still flying. So realistically, what's the point in having a deload at this point? So from an auto-regulatory point of view, Carla feels quite good and she can carry on going. However, from a coach's perspective, even though you are thinking that, you know, she's gone 100 miles an hour for the last 6 or 7 weeks and she is peaking very, very well, is it actually worth taking that preemptive deload, almost like a reloading week, to make sure that she doesn't crash and burn and really kind of hit her central nervous system to a detrimental effect?
Yeah, and this is, I think, where people sometimes get the deload wrong. And I put my hands up when I first went into the coaching scenario and doing programs. It's almost like you're reacting rather than being proactive.
Correct.
It's like you go into a physio, you want to get your massage, you want to make sure that everything's ticking over nicely so you don't get injured, rather than going to them after you've been injured.
Yeah.
So it's the same with deloading. You want to be at a position where you're thinking, okay, I want to maintain good progress for the next months, years, without any sort of detriment to that individual. So but no, I'm sort of struggling with the words a little bit, because it's really hard to sort of explain, because people are so used to reacting to what's going on, not necessarily predicting what could happen.
Yes.
And I think sometimes as well, you have to be aware that when something's really, really good is happening, that old adage of too much of a good thing can be bad.
Yeah.
And like you said, Carla's coming on really well, and she's quite a good example at the moment, because obviously she's like real-time coaching thinking project. It's the case, we could carry on pushing it. She could get 100 for 4 next week. I'm pretty confident of that, or do 90 for 7 and be another PB. But it's almost like listening to Mike T's podcast the other day. Actually, we're in it for the long term, and like I said before, gunning it all the time isn't the best strategy for anybody. No. I'd rather be at sort of 85% and making continuous progress than spiking and dropping, spiking, dropping, spiking, dropping. Because at the end of the day, it's that's going to win, not peaking and losing, peaking and losing, because that peak's quite, it's not dangerous, but it's where it's a lot more risky with regard to physiological detriments.
Yeah.
If you're pushing, your body can only take so much, especially if you're in new territory. And then also, and mentally as well, if you keep going really well, and then all of a sudden, no, it goes to shit. It's like, oh no, have I got weaker? Is something going wrong? So it's those other aspects as well. You have to just be sort of conscious of. So, and everyone, like we talk about in other podcasts, everyone's different with regard to deloading. And some, I mean, for example, for you, using another sort of person who obviously I program for, because you know your body so well and you program your own nutrition obviously so well, when we sort of do a deload for you, it's almost just taking the foot off the gas just a fraction.
Yeah.
Because if we take it completely off, I have to not restart the engine, but if we take the foot off the gas a little bit more, or to what other people might count as a deload, it's almost like your wheels are just free spinning.
Yes.
There's no lose the plot's the wrong word, but your body, it needs that constant stimulation, because it's without flattening your ego too much. You're a quite highly tuned lifter.
Correct.
You're quite an experienced lifter. You're quite not elite in terms of powerlifting numbers per se, but you're very conditioned. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yes.
So to take away that stimulus that's keeping you at, there we go, the stimulus that you need to maintain is a lot higher than someone, well, quite a lot of people who I train in other gyms, etc. So to drop it down to 55, well, not to 55, or 65% just to keep things ticking over, that would just completely mess you up.
Yeah,
because you'll just be like, oh well, I'm not doing anything, I need to do something. And I need to keep those wheels turning and without them just freewheeling. So when we're deloading for you for the comp next week, you'll still probably be at 85-90%. The volume will be a little bit less, just over recovery, but you'll still need to feel that traction. You'll still need to feel those gears turning rather than just going down the hill and freewheeling.
Indeed, yeah, definitely. Well, that's it. Because if you think about it, this is like my taper at the moment this week before a deload, and my taper is still hitting a 1 rep max.
Well, yeah, because I know, and people go, well, what is he doing that for? But I know, or we'll find out next Saturday. I got that right or wrong. But I know that you could probably do a 1 rep max without too much issue every other day.
Yeah.
If I did that to anyone else, they'd be fried after the week.
And I think this actually comes down to if you know how to train hard or not.
Yeah.
So like in my bodybuilding programming that I have and that I do, because obviously we just I'm not a 3, for people who don't actually know about my lifts and that kind of thing, I'm not an all-round powerlifter. I just do the bench. So we just literally program bench 4 times a week, which is hardcore. And then on those days, because I just can't do upper sessions 4 days a week, my upper, I look like a men's physique compared to a huge upper body and like no legs. But I have bodybuilding style legs, so I'm a hybrid athlete. And for people who say to me that they work hard and then they actually watch a couple of videos that I do on a hack squat or a pendulum squat, that is hard training. And these are like, they're not 1 rep maxes, of course, because you don't do that on a hack squat and you don't do it on a pendulum squat. But this is like literally leaving nothing in the tank. And I'm ruined at the end of a leg session. So the fact that I can do a 1 rep max, like on my heavy bench, for example, I'll probably still have that in on my deload week, which is just that number that I probably do, but on the Monday, because I'm not going to be lifting until the Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I have actually written your program for next week, but we obviously won't be maxing because we want to say that for the platform, but you'll be roughly around second attempt.
Yeah.
Which will probably only be about 2.5 to 3.5 kilos less than what we're gunning for on the day anyway.
Yeah.
Because having programmed you before, I know that if it's any lighter, when you get to doing those heavy weights 5-6 days time at the comp, they're going to feel alien to you because that's your time frame of recovery, and is a lot shorter. It's almost like you're a mouse because you got your mouse years and you got the human years, you got elephant years. Your years are like spinning around so quickly.
Yeah.
Your week's actually a day.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So and it's quite synonymous with female lifters, and especially because you only concentrate on the bench. I know you do a lot of heavy work on your legs, more volume wise rather than intensity.
Yeah.
But this will be different if you were actually peaking for the squat, bench, and deadlift comp rather than just a bench only. Because again, like we've alluded to, your recovery skill set is high. The fact that you're only doing bench and with a high recovery skill set means, like I said, you can probably max out pretty much every other day without too much of an issue. When you bring obviously squat and deadlift into play, then they're going to have a little bit more impact on your bench, etc. So we'd have to manipulate that. But it's deloading is actually probably just good just to talk about it today, actually, because it's one of those that people always get confused about. And to be honest, I don't think anyone knows the answer 100% about how to do it properly, because there are instances where people actually during their cycle or their block or whatever you want to call it, actually start heavy and then reverse down. Yeah. I mean, Mike T talked about that when one of his lifters for the Worlds, but his deadlift. Now he started really quite heavy in his cycle and then actually got lighter as he was peaking towards the comp.
Sure.
Because he knew that would work for him, and so therefore he doesn't need a deload on his deadlift because he's pretty much done a taper down for the last 12-16 weeks, whatever it was. And doing a deload, most people think, oh, it's 60%, 3 sets of 6 or whatever on squat, bench, and deadlift, and a little bit less assistance work, and that will work. And then for general population or beginner and intermediate athletes, that might be okay. But I think as you get a bit more advanced, then you're going to have to be a little bit more aware of where that cutoff point is to resting and having that super compensation. So you're then starting back at hopefully a higher peak. Although does super compensation work for everyone? Again, as a coach, you have to be aware of that. And you can explain what super compensation is, just in case people aren't aware what I just said.
What about compensation?
Yeah.
So basically, it's things along the lines of the reason why you don't train or lift heavy for 2 or 3 days before the competition is because you rest, recover, and come back stronger. Yeah. It's almost like you have this over recovery rather than overtraining. So it's the same kind of thing as if I take it into a nutritional side of you, it's almost like you deplete all of your carbohydrates. This is for a bodybuilder, right?
Okay, cool.
You deplete all of your carbohydrates and go through this depletion phase for 3 or 4 days, depending on the athlete and depending if they actually need it or not. Because obviously we have to work through a complete off season first, and then a peak, and then contest prep and all the rest of it. Not necessarily in that order. I was just obviously saying those things. But you deplete all of your glycogen stores, and then the reason why you do that is because then you can load your carbohydrates in order to have a super compensation effect. So you basically fill out all of your empty pockets and empty muscle tissue, so you look fuller. Yeah. And it is classed as a super compensation effect. Does that work for everybody without overspilling? Not all the time. Does everybody need a depletion period? Not definitely not. Do people respond differently to depletion and to filling up those glycogen stores? Absolutely. Can you get it really fucking wrong? Hell yeah, you can. What a massive example of mine is that I was depleted for 7 days. And this was for peaking for a competition, bodybuilding competition wise. And then I was loaded with carbohydrates for 3 days. And over those 3 days, I took in over 3,500 grams of carbohydrates.
Wow.
No, I didn't. That was a complete fucking lie. What am I talking about? So I'm sorry, I was talking about calories, not carbohydrates. 3,500 calories worth of carbohydrates over a 3-day period, and that did not include the load that I needed on the day of the competition, and I was still flat. Wow. So I'm talking about like nearly 1,500 to 1,800 worth of carbohydrates for a 47 kilo person on show day, and I was still flat. And it's because of the simple fact that I was depleted so much that the super compensation did not take effect.
Well, you still probably still under the curve, under the baseline, weren't you? You're still there rather than going, okay, that's where I want to be.
Exactly.
Adjusted.
So you can deplete or deload too much. So like we were just talking about with my deload, if I deloaded at 60% and then didn't train for like 3 or 4 days prior to the competition, those weights that I'm going to be lifting on the platform would be failure weights to me because I haven't had enough time to basically get that recoil in, and I would have been depleted or deloaded too much.
Yeah, you basically would have super compensated too early and then deconditioned before. And this is why super compensation can work, but this is also where some coaches with some athletes, like I'm pretty much doing with you to an extent, is they just keep it ticking over. Because how many times do people get PBs, massive PBs in the gym where they're actually quite highly conditioned during their cycle, and you sometimes go off program and go, do you know what, that 100 kilos for 2 look really good. Your PB is 105. Let's try 105 for 2. Yeah. And they get it, and it's like, oh wow, that's amazing, getting stronger. Yeah, brilliant. And then you go back to the comp and you've deloaded, and then all of a sudden 105 feels like 215.
Sure.
And it's a case of finding out what works for you. And if you can, we keep saying that, but sometimes it's better not necessarily to deload in the comp in the traditional sense, but to actually just keep things ticking over. And I think sometimes this is where a few coaches are going right, because they're going, I don't need to deload. I just need to just fractionally rein it in a little bit, or just make it, I know people might say that is a deload, but it's not a deload in a traditional sense. It might just be just making it 80% rather than 85% that day, rather than going right back. So this is where it comes back to what works for that individual, and it tends to work better, that sort of deloading, with females who can recover a lot quicker, who aren't necessarily pushing as heavy weights as the 300-pound guys in the gym who have shown to be needing a lot more rest and recovery to peak. And again, people who are maybe, I'm not really au fait with this sort of thing, but people who are assisted, who aren't necessarily natural, their recovery is going to be completely skewed with those who are clean. So it's well, I don't know, maybe you could answer this possibly, but I don't know whether if you're on the gear, I know you recover quicker, but because of the weights that you've been using a lot more, would that counteract what you're on, or
no, absolutely not. No, I mean, it obviously depends on what kind of exogenous assistance that you are on as well. But realistically, an assisted lifter, bodybuilder, whatever, they can literally just go in and gun it. And then the very next day, they'll absolutely feel fresh as daisy. Whereas and they'll just go in and gun it again. Whereas there are obviously points where they will need to have some time off.
Yeah.
But that time off will also coincide with the exogenous hormones that they put in. So, because there's only so much that you can push before you actually get injured, and that's the reason why you see a lot of assisted athletes who do get injured on a more frequent basis, because they don't actually show those red flags, or they're not as easy to data collect, and they're not as easy to pinpoint. Whereas, like, say, for example, if a natural lifter actually said, you know what, I have got zero motivation to train today, really don't want to do it. I'm feeling a little bit tentative, and they're right at the end of kind of like a high peaking block, then that is a red flag, and that would be like, okay, so you're not motivated to train, whereas you were 4 days ago. That could be, to me, that you're either going to need an auto-regulated rest day, or you are coming to the end of that heavy block. So it's kind of understandable that you're going to be feeling like that.
Yeah, and I think just to answer Tracy's question about when you should do it, that's a prime example. And to understand when to do it is looking back and keeping decent logs about how you feel, what you're lifting, what your mental approach is that day or that week, etc. Because, I mean, going back to Carla, she's flying at the moment. And so it's like, do we carry on flying, or do we just land the plane a little bit? And one of the things you could do is just carry on flying and see when she crashes, because inevitably she will have to land, using the plane analogy now. Or do we, so you can then see, okay, when's the last time she landed? Okay, it was 10 weeks ago. And this is how we went up the runway, and now we're coming back down like that, but hopefully on a higher runway, so to speak.
Correct.
So it's not like a 2 week, 4 week process of understanding how you tick or how your athlete ticks. It's going to take, if you really want to know your athlete, it's going to take a good sort of half year to really, at minimum, to really understand what's going on with their body on certain lows and certain intensities. So you're looking at a good sort of 2 or 3 cycles. I know some people might say, oh, you can do it after 1 cycle, but people react differently to training during different times of the year. So it's, I know people, that's a bit odd to say, but I mean, people in the summer are a lot more motivated to train.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's like you were just talking about being sad, with this seasonal affective disorder. And it's not just certain points in the year that does that. For women, it will be certain points in the month.
Yes, 100%.
Where it coincides with their menstrual cycle. Because, women are just completely and utterly screwed up, to be perfectly honest with you. And trying to program women who have immense reactions to their menstrual cycle peaking in terms of progesterone, and that lowering of estrogen as well, where you do feel down, you do feel that emotional response and that kind of thing, and trying to get them into the gym. Some people actually feel a hell of a lot better when they are having that peak, but some people are just like ready to tear people's heads off. So you've got to be very, very careful in how you program for that side. I know that I've got an athlete that I program for where literally she needs to take 4 days off every month. Because otherwise she's going to feel like shit in the gym. So in terms of those 4 days, we literally give her active recovery days where she goes in and does some either just some accessories, or she goes and does some like little bit of HIIT cardio or something like that. But we coincide that with her nutrition to make her feel a hell of a lot better. And it works very well for her. But this again is, there's no way that I would have been able to know that in the first month of programming for her. It did take at least, I'm going to say about 3 or 4 months where we actually tracked her menstrual cycle month on month on month, and then week to week, and then almost day to day when it came to those 4 days where we had to auto-regulate. So she does have certain programs that she can actually pick and choose from where she auto-regulates those days.
But you wouldn't be able to get those certain programs in a month or two. Like you say, it's going to take at least 4 months to really understand what's going on with her. And also, people are going to have, it's not going to be the same each month either.
No, not at all.
So you need almost that background information to make some educated, they still semi guesswork about what's going to happen, what's going to be working best for her. And I think as well, people can be scared of deloads.
Oh yeah.
I think people and I know Tracy, because obviously I train her. If I get her just to rein it in a little bit, and like a lot of other people, they'll be like, oh, well, I don't want to lose my gains. Actually, no, you're solidifying them. This is where the mortar settles, so to speak. So you can then build on more bricks. If you look at it like that. I mean, from my own personal viewpoint, I've been smashing it for years and years and years, and it's only now I've actually started looking outwards back into myself. I'm going, after 3 weeks, I just need to wind it in a little bit. And for someone who loves going to the gym and pushing it hard all the time, that's quite a hard pill to swallow. But
sure,
in a roundabout way, that every 4th week, I've just gone, I'll just train a couple of times this week. I'm just not into it, whatever.
Yeah,
I won't mention that
that's
to Vicky. On the Monday afterwards, I've come back and gone, oh my God, I'm like an animal.
Yeah.
And I've been tracking it and going, do you know what? Stop going against what your body's telling you. And I think that's one thing. It's not something to be worried about. Deloading will take your foot on the gas a little bit. It's part and parcel of training. It should be
Yes.
part and parcel of training. And have you seen that West Side versus the World yet? That DVD?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
Mate, it's really interesting because that's one of the most hardcore gyms. I didn't realize how hardcore it was until I saw the film. But Louis Simmons was going on about, I think, Chuck Boulderpole. I'm not too sure how to pronounce his surname, but I hope that was right. Insanely strong guy, just absolutely nuts. I mean, they were saying he was using squats with band tension at the top. It was like 1,400 pounds. You're just like, that is just sickening. But even Louis said the problem with Chuck was that he never took any time off.
Yeah.
Kept pushing. And this is from a coach that's renowned for pushing people. So it's something not to be embraced all the time, but it's something to be, okay, it needs to be logically and structurally put in there, because it's going to benefit you in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just going to benefit you physically, but it's going to benefit you neurologically, mentally, emotionally, physiologically as well. I mean, even if we don't just take your guy there, Chuck, as an example, you can also take Ronnie Coleman as an example. Everybody knows Ronnie for just pushing the heavy weights outside his range of motion, not recovering the way he is doing. And then look at him, he is a broken man now.
Yeah.
And the fact that he can turn around, don't get me wrong, I love Ronnie. I've got a lot of respect for him as well, because he is so brutally honest about everything. And he even says, looking back on things now, would he do things differently? Hell yeah, he will. Because, absolutely. I mean, was it worth the injuries that he has now to stand on that stage and become the man he was? He says, yeah. But would he look back and do something different so now he doesn't have to walk with crutches? Yeah, he would do.
Yeah.
So it is about sometimes, when you grow up and be as old as we are, you can look back on the mistakes that you have made. And I put my mistakes up all the time in terms of my depletion and my first ever competition in bodybuilding, and just say, look at where I was. And I thought this is where I needed to be. And it wasn't. I was ill, and it's that kind of thing where we want to educate people that you're not going to be a detriment to yourself, and that you are going to seek out coaches who are not going to deplete you, who are not going to push you over to the edge every single training session, because it's going to be detrimental to your health as well. And if you want longevity in this game, then program yourself smartly in terms of nutrition and in terms of lifting and training, so you can continue to play the long game with emotional and health and wellness in mind. Yeah.
Oh, well, do you know what? I think that's a fantastic ending.
I think so as well.
I think we're getting quite good at this, Vicky.
We are, I think, every now and again. Right, so that is it from us, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you ever so much for tuning into Exclusive Titan Chit Chat again. If you've got any more questions, or you want another subject that we want to that you want us to discuss, then please just message us, slide into the DMs, or just comment on the underneath on this video.
Yeah. Cool, perfect.
Cool beans.
Cheers, everyone.
Lovely to speak to you as always, Luke.
Ditto, mate. Ditto.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Happy sail.